Everyone sees a side on the news, but I live it. I have to live this every day. People are hurting. They're gonna be hurting for the rest of their lives. So those are the after effects. It's like the aftershock of these crimes.
Around the nation, gun violence is destroying families and weakening communities. And it's becoming a leading cause of death for young people. We know that in nearly every city, only a small number of people are driving most of the violence. An approach called Group Violence Intervention, or GVI, identifies those individuals and engages with them directly, trying to offer them a way out before the violence occurs. It's not just about stopping the shootings. It's about building a community where everyone feels like they have a shot at hope. Behind every headline about violence is a story of unimaginable loss. Yolanda Harrison is a mother, a veteran, a nurse, and now an advocate. Her 20-year-old son, Devin, was shot and killed. What followed was a painful journey through grief and several unanswered questions.
He had graduated Bryan High School in 2016. He went to college. He went to SAU Tech. He was a graphic design major. And after his first year of college, he was like, Mom, he's a music guy. So Devin played the bass guitar. He played keyboard a little. He played in several small bands. He had friends that would perform like at Vino's and places, and he would fill in for them. So he kind of loved his music, and he could mix music, like make beats on his Apple laptop and stuff. So he was really into music, but he didn't want to do graphic design anymore. He wanted to come back home and change schools and major in music. And I was against everything because I just felt like he wasn't going to make money in music, but I let him follow his own dream. So once he graduated, he went to school 1 year, came back home. He was working. He said he was going to work and start back in the spring of 2019. So he wanted to work, take that semester off and work, and then just start back in January of 2019 and start back to school. So he wanted to save up some money. So that's what his plan was. So Devin was really quiet, never been in trouble with the law, never been in trouble at home. I mean, he was a rebellious kid as far as like, nothing major bad. Like you said, he wasn't stealing or doing drugs or doing nothing crazy like that. But he was just, stay out past curfew sometimes, do things like that, But other than that, he was a mama's boy, real quiet, real mild-mannered young man. Like he's the young man that if we're in the grocery store, there's an elderly lady, he'd go help her put her groceries in the car. Like that was him, He was involved in church. We went to Second Baptist, so he was involved in church, and he worked with the youth, the musicians with the youth group. And so he was involved with the youth groups from the age of 5 until he graduated high school. And other than that, just love practical jokes, always pranking me and his sister. Oh, I missed that, but he used to do a lot of pranks on us. I don't know his obsession with pranks, but he was a big Criss Angel fan. Oh my God, his love for magic, well, Criss Angel actually, not just any magician, but Criss Angel specifically. So we were gonna like get him tickets for his 21st birthday before he was killed to go see him in Vegas. That was the plan. So, excuse me.
Devin was working, saving money, and planning to return to school in the spring. The night he died, he and Yolanda had planned to go to the movies.
And he worked part-time at the movie theater. He was a big movie guy also, so we always rate movies. Sorry, the memories, I'm sorry. This particular night, we were supposed to go to the movies, and I had a headache. So he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll be back. We'll go tomorrow night. He said, I'll be back. I need to go meet with, he may have mentioned the young man's name. He said he wanted some beats. He wanted to hear some beats, and I'll be back. And that was the last time I saw him that night. He said, well, I love you. I said, I love you too. Nothing unusual about that night. He left the house that night, and I just got a call, middle of the night, like 1:30, 2 o'clock. And work at a hospital, so I saw the phone number. I knew it was a hospital number, but I didn't know which hospital. And the lady was kind of whispering. She said, Hi. I said, hi. And I raised up. I said, hi, yes, ma'am. She said, are you the mom of Devin? Are you the guardian of Devan Sprawling? I said, I'm his mother. I said, who's this? She said, could you come up to St. Vincent? I said, sure. I said, why? What's going on? I said, was he in a car wreck or something? My husband went with me and my niece. I stopped and picked her up from her house. So we went up there. So I think Devin was in a car wreck. Those were my exact words. So when I got up there, I saw crime scene tape and I saw blood. But again, didn't think anything. I said, oh, something happened to somebody. I'm walking in the ER, and she said, come through the ER. So I came in, and as soon as I walked in, 3 officers like just bombarded me. I said, whoa, I was shocked. So they took me in this room, and I said, wait a minute. I said, work in the hospital. I said, just don't beat around the bush with me. I said, what is going on? I said, you got me here. I said, I know this routine. I work in the ER. I said, so then the chaplain walked in. I stood up. I said, what's going on? He said, oh, he was real calm. He said, ma'am, you mind having a seat? I said, sir, I work in the ER. I said, why are you here? I said, talk to me. Just be straight up. Don't beat around any bushes with me. So at that point, he said the doctor walked in. She had blood on her. She was kind of upset, and she said, we're working on him. I said, working on him? What's going on? What do you mean you're working on him? She said, well, there's been an accident. Did they not tell you? I said, no. I said, what kind of accident? She said, your son was shot. I said, is he okay? You say you're working on him. I said, can I go in there and see him? She said, no. I said, I work in the ER. I said, let me go in. Let me go in. I nothing there I haven't seen. Oh, wow. So, and the chaplain said, let her go. That's her son. Let her go in. So I was like, yeah, let me go. I'm thinking maybe it got shot in the arm or something.
What happened next is something no mother should ever have to endure.
I didn't expect to walk in, see my son laying there with a hole in his head. Yeah. I think that at that moment, I died. My spirit left my body because it wasn't me there. I think it's almost like I glided up to his body, and I was staring at my son. I touched him. He was cold, and they were doing CPR on him. And she allowed me to get that close, and which is rare. We don't allow family to get that close to someone, but she allowed me. I was just standing there, just staring at him, staring at this, and here I am. I tried to pretend it wasn't my son. I said, okay, gunshot wound, back of the head, entrance wound to the back, exit through the front. I'm literally talking like this was someone else. Like this wasn't my son. Like I'm looking at a patient that wasn't my son, and I'm describing what was going on. I said, gunshot wound, back of the head. I'm just talking to myself, just kind of mumbling this. I said, vital signs. I said, vital signs not good. I said, they're doing CPR. I'm literally talking as if I'm working. And I think they all thought I was crazy. I was just talking, just mumbling. And the doctor stood right there beside me looking at me, and I said, continue CPR, as if he was not my child. And she said, you heard her, continue CPR. I remember telling them that. They continued CPR. They said, we're gonna shock him again. They shocked him. Vitals came back. I said, vitals back. And he started flatlining again. I said, shock him again. And she looked at me. I said, shock him again. And she said, shock him again. She told them to shock him again. I remember them shocking him. And when they shocked him that second time, this blood started gushing out of his nose. And I guess I blacked out at that moment. I don't remember what happened after that. I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember his funeral. I literally, from that moment, I remember up to that moment, but from that moment to after the funeral, they said I wrote his obituary word for word. I don't remember. I literally do not remember. I've been in counseling. I don't remember anything. I picked out his clothes. I don't remember. So, but afterwards, I was in extensive counseling. I had a private counselor for several years. Matter of fact, I took a whole year off work, well, probably 10 months. So I worked with some awesome people. Of course, I didn't have that much leave, but so many doctors donated their leave. They don't take leave hardly, doctors, but they all donated so I could be off like 10 months. Yeah, awesome. After that, I said, okay, I have to pull myself together because I have a daughter. She was in the Air Force. His sister is 6 years older than him. I said, I have to pull myself together because I have to fight for my son. I have to be his voice. I said, so if I don't pull it together, who's going to be his voice?
In the weeks and months that followed, she searched for answers and accountability.
I started just getting involved with different groups and just throwing myself into these groups and just trying to direct all that grief and anger and hate I had for the young man that took my son to something positive, because I'm like, this is not what God wants for me. He doesn't want me to hate. Because here my son was like, he could have been this thug on the street, not saying that he still would have deserved to die, but the fact that he didn't have anything going on bad in his life. Like, he was trying to do everything right, and I lost him. He grew up in a house where he and his sister had a great life. I made sure they lived in the best neighborhoods, went to the best schools. I tried to, do everything right. Like, but that wasn't good enough. It didn't save my son. So I think a lot of my pain came from that, because it's like, why did we work so hard to give him this life, and I still lost him? So it's like, God, you have to help me with this, because it didn't make sense. Like, why did we do all this to still lose him? Like, we didn't want him to be a statistic, and he ended up being a statistic on the other end. I always told him, don't be that young man. Don't fall into stereotypes. Don't be the angry black boy. Don't be sagging. He knew not to sag. He wasn't allowed to sag. You weren't allowed to. And I know this may be kind of stereotypical, I didn't like all the dreads. He kept his hair very low cut. I'm ex-military. His dad was too, so we very militant. We were very militant with him. Like, nice haircut. He has to stay clean cut. Like, I didn't want him to fit in any stereotypes, and we did everything to do that. And I still lost him. So it's like, didn't matter what everything we did for him not to fit, he ended up being on the other end of the gun violence. Like, I didn't want him to be the kid to pull the trigger, hurt someone, or be a bad guy, rob someone, steal, or I always want him, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. He did that. To the day he died, he was always very polite. So it's like, I wanted that for my son. I wanted him to be the good guy. You always be a good kid. You always do the right thing. And yes ma'am, I do. Mom, I always do. You tell me that, And that's the life we wanted for him, and we thought we gave him, but obviously somebody else didn't teach their child that.
She was told the shooting was likely accidental, but she says that she found that hard to believe.
This is a story that I got, so I wasn't there, so I'm telling you guys like what I heard. My son got to the house on Fair Park. He came in with his laptop, and it was 5 boys. I did not know the other boys at all. I never met any of them, even the one who pulled the trigger. I've never met him before. So they said my son was sitting at a table with his laptop open, and he was doing something with a beat or something, and the other 2 guys were sitting, like, it was 2 rooms, but like it was an open room. Like, they were sitting in there listening, and so he had the speakers on and he was mixing. They wanted him to see if he could collaborate 2 songs and make a 3rd song, like 2 songs. And he was like, they say he was the only person who could do that they knew. So he actually did it. So they were cheering. So the young man who pulled the trigger, he happened to just came into the house, like at the end of them while they were there. He came in like at the end. Now, to this day, I don't know where the gun, it wasn't my son's gun. I don't know where the gun came from. The officers never really told me who brought the gun. They said the young man who pulled the trigger didn't bring the gun, but it wasn't my son's gun. But all I know is that the story that I originally got from the police officers, that the young man was waving the gun and it went off and shot my son. But I didn't believe that. I called the coroner. He said there was so much gunpowder. Because when I saw my son, I knew he was lying about waving the gun. He was like, literally like he was in another room in the gun. I know gunshot wounds. That was a point blank, because this here was open, and I know how gunshot wounds look. And I said, no, I couldn't accept what they were telling me. I said, you all are lying to me. He said, we don't have to lie. I said, you are lying. I didn't want to tell them how I knew. I saw my son's head. And so he said that, coroner said, there was so much gunpowder on the back of your son's head. I knew it was point blank. So the story that they wrote down and what the officers were sticking with, he was waving in and excited and the gun just went off. No, it was pointed to his head and trigger was pulled. It was literally on his head. So he never knew. And I asked the coroner, did he die immediately? Because I needed to know he didn't suffer. I needed to know that. Because I know sometimes you can get gunshot wounds and you don't immediately die. He said from the wound, he had to immediately, that made me feel better because I didn't want my son to suffer what he went through. And also what upset me was they didn't call 911. They did not call 911. They attempted to clean up my son's blood. They attempted to clean the scene as he lay there bleeding out. So instead of them doing that, they took it upon themselves. After they cleaned, attempted to clean, they decided to pick up his body, put it in someone's car, and drive to St. Vincent. Hence, the blood y'all saw when I came in, that was my son when they drugged him out of the car into the emergency room.
She also struggled with how the media portrayed her son.
The first article I saw in the news was, had my son's name on news. He was shot, and the young man who shot him, felony drug charges. I said, drugs? So immediately I got angry. I was angry at my son at this point. I'm like, drugs? Like, surely my son wasn't trying to sell drugs as much as we give him and buy for him. So when I did my investigation, I'm telling you, I became a detective myself. I went to police department every day. I said, tell me who had drugs, what? Oh, nobody had drugs. What? No drugs. There was no drugs. I said, well, what about the alcohol? There was no alcohol. I said, so why did the news say that? So when I called the news stations, of course I called all of them, you all reported, said there was drugs. Oh, we thought. But you put that out there on my son, every stereotype that I have worked so hard not to have on him, here he is, black male, now drug charge. So everybody think, oh, was Devin selling drugs? Like, are you kidding me? So time went on, COVID came, 2 years went by, no trial. So finally, they were charging him with manslaughter, which I wanted them to charge him with first degree. They said, well, no, because he said it was an accident. It doesn't matter. The gun pattern shows that it wasn't an accident. Well, man, we have to stick with that. We cannot charge too high or he can walk. Well, guess what he did? He took a plea.
The shooter was charged with negligent homicide, a misdemeanor, and served less than a year in jail.
That's pretty much how my son's case ended. It was just like no real investigation. I still have a lot of pieces, and I think that's why I don't really have the closure, because I never really got the answers.
Out of this loss, Yolanda founded an organization, Mothers of Black Sons Standing Against Death. She began using her voice to raise awareness and push for change.
And it's really moms of all sons, but we say black sons because black males, homicide is the #1 cause of death for black males, black and brown males. So I want to bring awareness to that. So many communities aren't aware, like, how bad the stats are. You know, you have literally, even though the black community is like 12, 13% of the population, black males only make up maybe 5 or 6%. So 5% of the population literally is responsible for 50% of the homicides. That is staggering. Why are black males, how are they able to get guns? I've found out like 12 and 13-year-olds don't have lunch money, but they can get an AK-47 before they can buy lunch. How is that possible? Somebody knows the answer to this. How can he get this gun? So what do we do? And that's why I want my organization, you know, we out there trying to figure out what can we do to stop the young man with violence. I've talked with the mayor about getting more activities in the city, and I know most of those cities, there's not enough activities for these young people. They feel like this is their only way out, you know. And I know that a lot of the young boys are being led by older boys, criminals, because it's easy for them to take the time if they're juvenile. Yeah, get on out. You're in juvie, so you can get out soon. So of course they're gonna do what the older boys say, you know, so, you know, to fit in. So how can we change this? And I literally work with several former gang members. I sit down with them and talk with them. They're no longer in gangs, and they went in their old community that they grew up in and went out in the streets and talked to young boys about, don't do it. Don't trade places with us. We went to prison before. We have changed. We don't want you all. So they made a difference. So obviously these are the things that need to be done. I'm part of the Hope Council, the Mayor's Hope Council. I'm on there as an advocate speaking about the gun violence. So they pretty much just get my viewpoint on, like you said, my personal experience about what can we do with gun violence. So I, again, share my story about, what I've experienced and how it affects mothers like me or parents or families. So they can see the real side of what gun violence does. Everyone sees the side on the news, but I live it. I have to live this every day. So that's why I do what I do. To know there's a face behind this pain. There may be a gunshot wound, and next week you're on a new one. But guess what? The last one, so there's pain behind that one. There's pain behind this one. There's pain behind this one. Even though we're on number 25, but 1 through 24, people are hurting. They're going to be hurting for the rest of their life. So those are the after effects. It's like the aftershock of these crimes.
Stories like Yolanda's remind us that outrage alone is not enough. We need real evidence-based strategies to break the cycle of violence and save lives. In this special series from Smart Justice, we'll continue to examine a strategy that's been working for several cities around the nation, called group violence intervention. We'll introduce you to people who are passionate about bringing it to their community. Solutions begin with all of us, and we all need a shot at hope. Listen to A Shot at Hope on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Or go to smartjustice.org.